literally, if you see where, like, you can see where the wheel actually pushes his head down, and he's literally like, oh, and his helmet and everything. I'm just so grateful for Formula One safety, because I don't even want to think about what could have happened if that halo hadn't been there.
literally. But then Mercedes and their shit stops, that's what I'm going to call them from now on. Mercedes shit stops meant that he had like an extra long pit stop. Hi guys, welcome back to On the Chicane. You're here with me, Paris, and my co-host Marium, and today we're going to go through everything that happened in the Italian Grand Prix in Monza this past weekend. It was the last one of a triple header that's taken us to Spa and then Zandvoort, and then finally we're in Monza. So it's been a crazy 3 weeks, and a lot has happened over the past 3 weeks on the track and off the track. So there's lots to discuss as always, and stick with us. We're going to go through it right now. So Mariam, Friday we had everybody coming to Monza. Lots of stuff happening even before the kind of race and practices. You had Aston doing a bit of promo for like Bond and stuff. How did you find that?
I am so bonded out. Like, honestly, it's been intense. But yeah, no. So obviously Aston Martin and James Bond, there's a huge history there, and we've seen a little bit from Red Bull in the past when they were Aston Martin, Red Bull, whatever the hell they were. But now there's an actual team, so there's a full activation for James Bond. Lots going on the social channels. Lots going on at the actual track. So yeah, that was quite fun. I feel
I
like,
thought it was pretty cool, to be honest. I quite liked it because there was the one video that had the F1 cars, but in the James Bond scenarios,
yeah,
which
so
I
it's
thought
kind of
like that'd
like
be quite
the
fun.
livery reveal for the
Yeah.
weekend, which had the 007 emblazoned across. And it was quite a fun little spin on, like, just James Bond and whatever. So that was quite fun. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, Friday was, well, obviously the weekend was a little bit skewed because we had another sprint quali, so the second one
Yeah.
of the season. So obviously Friday was FP1 and quali, then Saturday was FP2 sprint quali, and then obviously Sunday the race. Um, and the man that everyone's been slating all season, and the man that lost his seat at Mercedes last week, was the one to basically top all the time sheets, put in like his best performance this season, and just absolutely smash it.
What was it Valtteri said last season to the haters? FU.
Something like that.
So yeah, I feel like that was a massive FU to all the haters and anybody who's like overly harshly criticized him this year. I feel like him having that breather of no pressure from what's happening off the track with all the contacts and things allowed his mindset to be fully ripened for everything that was going down this weekend, because he absolutely smashed it on Friday in quali. Taking the Speed King award. It's not exactly pole position because it gets you first place in the sprint quality. So, the fact that he managed to do that, and then, it must have been a little bit of an FU to Mercedes. As much as I'm sure he's happy to do it for the team, but I feel like there was a bit of a like, look what you're missing out on.
Definitely. I agree with
Yeah.
that one. Um, yeah, I mean, he was literally on form. And I think there was something different with his setup this weekend. I think that's what I heard. Which makes you wonder, like, where has this setup been all season? And also,
Yeah.
what's going to happen going forward? Are they going to continue with the same setup? Like, does it only work on certain tracks like Monza where there's like long straights and it's a fast track? Because we're going to Russia next, and Russia is not very good for overtaking. Doesn't have so many straights. There's a lot of twists and turns. So it's going to be interesting to see how he carries that on, because honestly, Bottas was bringing big energy to this weekend. So yeah, very interesting.
It really was. We have to sing his praises. So
Yeah.
on to the Saturday. so with sprint quali, like Mariam said, you end up having qualifying on a Friday, which sets the grid for sprint quali on a Saturday. There's a free practice on Saturday morning, and then we go into the sprint quali actual mini race. So this time it was like 18 laps around Monza. How did you feel about it? Like, what did you think about sprint quali? I feel like that kind of silence actually says, because it wasn't memorable. Like, it was very dull in a sense. Like, you had essentially what is like the first part of a race, where they're all just kind of like following each other, and maybe like the first lap stuff happened, but after that it wasn't particularly amazing, I don't think.
Yeah, I think the thing that stood out for me and still stands out is obviously Hamilton's pace, / lack thereof, and yeah, just how well Bottas was doing. I It's weird because, like you say, it's like you're watching a race and then all of a sudden it stops just like that. And then obviously there's the whole situation with like pit stops. Like, are they gonna pit? But then it's like, if you pit, then you're definitely putting yourself at the back of the grid because you're only doing 18 laps. And I think all of them were on softs, which is obviously great for speed. But then as you get closer to the end of like your stint, the degradation is intense, and like your tires start to run out and wear and whatever. So yeah, it was a bit of a tricky one. I think, wait, was Hamilton on hards? No, he wasn't on hards. I'm lying, completely lying. Ignore that. But yeah, I don't know. It was memorable, but not memorable at the same time. I don't know what I think of sprint quali in general. I don't know if I'm sold on it, but whatevs.
I don't think I'm sold on it, to be honest. Like, now seeing two, and I know people are gonna be like, two's not enough to make a like final decision or whatever. We've got a third one coming up. I don't know if they've announced which track it
Yeah,
is
the third one is going to be at, let me get this right because I'm covering that race. It is Brazil.
Brazil. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know. I having seen it twice now. When we watched it live, okay, it was a little bit exciting, but also I was caught up in the atmosphere of the whole weekend. And I think even then I was just like, it just makes qualifying on a Friday seem completely irrelevant. And then you've got that little free practice in the middle, kind of sandwiched in there. For what reason? It doesn't really do anything.
To be honest, I think I'd be quite happy to just do 2 practice sessions and a quali.
Yeah.
I don't think we need 3 practice sessions, but I don't think we should like, I don't know. Yeah.
I think sprint quali could be interesting, but as something else, like just a different race. I think I've said this before. I feel like they should just have, you know, a race where maybe they all race in the shittest car or something like that. Like, just something that's completely different, and it gets them all a bunch of points, and maybe it puts them all on a completely level playing field, so we can say for definite which the best driver is, or something like that. Like, just something that is actually really different.
Is though, like, thinking on a broader scale, that would be so difficult in terms of like a financial point of view, because you'd literally have to have an entire separate car, and a different setup and everything. So it's basically like you're racing with 2 cars. So I don't know if I see that. But there was talk this weekend apparently that they're thinking of doing sprint quali as a standalone race, which again,
that's what
I
I mean.
don't really know if I get it.
I don't know. It needs to be something different. It doesn't, in my opinion, it doesn't work as it is. And I'm not saying that because Hamilton lost out this weekend and last time, even though he did, in both cases. Because in Silverstone he had he had Speed King, and then he lost it in the sprint quali race. And in this race he was second and had a really, really poor start, and ended up dropping back to 5th. So he started the race in 5th. But I do just think that they just need to rethink it, because it's not as exciting as it should be. And I think that's kind of the main point of it. But getting on to the race, so as I said, Hamilton did drop back and he was in 5th, which meant that Mercedes were going to have to pull out an amazing strategy. Bottas was starting from the back because he had to, well, he had an issue with his car and they just said, right, let's just take this opportunity to change it so that he doesn't lose out later down the line. And him getting a new power unit allowed him to have way more pace in the race, and he actually did make the most of it by the end. So I think it was a good choice for them to change it this week, but such a shame for Bottas, who was having a phenomenal weekend.
Do you know what? Like, I rate Bottas so much for what he did this weekend, because considering he actually started at the back of the grid and then to finish on the podium, to finish third, at a track that is notoriously difficult for overtaking. Monza is not easy for overtaking. There's the speed, the straights are so fast that you barely get the opportunity. By the time you're close enough to the driver in front, you're out a corner or out a chicane. Yeah. So then you're like, okay, I don't really have the opportunity here. So it is really difficult to overtake at Monza. But Bottas pulled it off, did really well, and finished third after starting literally last. So yeah. Do you know what? Can't blame him. He did so well.
Definitely.
But yeah, the race itself, Hamilton, good Lord, that was not his weekend at all. No. I mean, where do we even start with like everyone's positions and the way that the race even went down?
Well, I think like let's start at the beginning. So lap one, you've got Verstappen in first. You've got him followed by the two McLarens. So we had Verstappen, Ricciardo, Norris, and they go through lap one. Ricciardo makes an early overtake on Verstappen, gets himself into the lead, and Hamilton actually did an okay job overtaking Norris at one point. So you ended up with Ricciardo, Verstappen, Norris, Hamilton. So there was like a little bit of a moment where everybody was in good positions for a while. Gasly and Tsunoda, we should mention, they had a bad start. Tsunoda ended up not starting at all. Gasly had an issue in sprint quali on Saturday and ended up having to change his PU and gearbox overnight, but then encountered issues during the race and ended up pulling into the pits and basically not finishing. So not a really good look for AlphaTauri at their home race, sadly. But yeah, like the beginning of the race I thought was pretty cool. Like I loved seeing the battles between like McLaren and Mercedes trying to overtake, Red Bull defending, and then you've got Bottas and Perez like way back where trying to come through the pack. As you said, that's already so difficult to overtake. So there was a lot kind of happening in that race, considering that it's not an overtaking track.
Yeah, the race, I don't know, I feel like it was all over the place. And yeah, for the home race guys like AlphaTauri and Ferrari, wasn't really their weekend. Considering that obviously Gasly won in Monza last year as well, you'd expect, well, I think everyone kind of had high hopes. Yeah. And also Ferrari as well, like they've been on form, they've been quite consistent, and we were hoping for a good weekend I was hoping for a good weekend from the Ferraris, but I think it just started going wrong in practice, like Sainz spinning off, Leclerc having troubles. So yeah, Ferrari in the end ended up like 5th and 6th or something like that. They just didn't do very well at all. It wasn't a memorable race for them, wasn't notable. Yeah, I mean, gutted for
It's kind of crazy that you say that as well with like Sainz, because we've been proper bigging them up the last few videos, haven't we? Like before this, maybe not Zambor, I can't think of the top of my head, but like like we were giving them props. I remember calling them the dynamic duo, and then they just had like a really bad race today. But on the flip side, McLaren had like a really good race. So this is what happens when you're rooting for half the grid. Like even if one of your teams does badly, you like end up kind of rooting for the other team to do well.
Well, I'm happy because it means that McLaren are now ahead of Ferrari in the bloody constructors, and that is not what I wanted. So, and I don't, this is going to sound horrible, and I'm probably going to get hate for this, but I don't really care for McLaren as a team. I like their drivers. but I don't really care for them to succeed as a team because I'm just not interested in McLaren really. Um,
It's
so for
interesting.
me, I would rather see Ferrari do better, but
I mean, you've been a Tifosi for like years and years now, so
trust me.
cannot expect anything less from a red girl.
Yeah,
Um, I did like McLaren, but then they kind of went on a bit mad. So then I was just like, But I do have a soft spot for Danny Rick, obviously, and he had a great race weekend. And Fernando and Lando has been doing amazingly. So I was definitely really proud to see them kind of like just doing their thing. What I thought was really interesting as well was that, so if we go on a little bit further into the race, Daniel Rick, he basically overtook Verstappen, as I said, in the first lap. And then when they came, a few laps in to start the pits, you had Verstappen's really bad pit at Red Bull. Like they had like an 11-second long pit. And you also had the Mercedes, like of Hamilton, also having a slightly significantly long pit. Like they had a 4.4-second pit stop. So the McLarens actually really did win on merit, like not just because they were already ahead and they were already doing well. And then obviously what happened next, what we're going to discuss. But I think even before that stuff happened, McLaren were doing really well.
yeah.
Which is interesting.
So yeah, moving on to the incident. Let's discuss pit stops. So Verstappen goes into the pits, has an awful pit stop, which is great because Red Bull is so well known for like doing really good pit stops, and we're like, oh, like he's gonna do good pit stop, blah blah blah. Like this was a race about strategy, to be fair.
Yeah.
So Red Bull, they have like an 11-second pit stop for Verstappen. He's obviously frustrated when he comes back out. So now Paris and I watched this race together, and we were both literally talking and saying, oh, do you know what? Hamilton can, he was on the hard tires at this point. So we were like, Hamilton can probably still go for another like at least 10 laps or so. And then if they pit him for the softs, then he's got like a long enough stint to be able to keep going on the softs, but he'll have the speed to, maybe get to the forefront. What do Mercedes go and do? They pit Hamilton like a lap or two after Verstappen, and it made no sense. I don't think there was anything wrong with Hamilton's tyres at that point either. So there was no need for them to bring him in so soon. So then they bring him in and they have that, like, it wasn't as long as the Red Bull pit, but it was like, what, 5 seconds or something?
It was 4.4, yeah.
Yeah. So something ridiculous. And then he comes out. And then as he's coming out of the pits, Verstappen's just coming around. And then, shit hits the fan.
I think one of the things was on the strategy wall, from what I understand, Mercedes figured that they could bring Hamilton in and that he would come out ahead of Verstappen, because when Verstappen went in, Ricardo's already leading. Ricardo comes in, so Norris is leading. And as Norris is leading, Hamilton overtook Norris. So he was ahead, and then Norris picked. So Hamilton was technically, for a moment, in the lead just before he pitted. And I think their thoughts were like, yeah, like we'll bring him in and, he'll come out ahead of Verstappen. But then Mercedes and their shit stops, that's what I'm going to call them from now on, Mercedes shit stops, meant that he had like an extra long pit stop. So that, I feel like that few seconds extra made all of the difference, because had he had a really good pit stop, he would have probably been far enough ahead of Verstappen that he would have come out before Verstappen hit that corner. Yeah. And they wouldn't have been in that issue for them to then be battling around that chicane. It wouldn't have happened at all.
So yeah, do you want to touch upon what happened on that?
Yeah. So Hamilton comes out of the pits, follows the pit exit rules and waits to cross the line, crosses the line and is slightly ahead of Verstappen. Verstappen comes into the braking zone, obviously at speed, and kind of comes alongside Hamilton, comes around on the outside. They go through a chicane, so it's like one of the double chicanes where you do one curve, then another curve. and they're battling round. And as he goes round to the second, as Verstappen is going around the second curve, Hamilton's obviously taken the racing line because he's in front of Verstappen, which means that either Hamilton can move over on the racing line to give Verstappen enough space on the track. He chooses not to, as is his right. And then Verstappen also has a choice to make: stay in the position that he's in or go off. And he chooses not to go off, which a lot of people have done. And even in the first lap, when Hamilton was racing Norris, I believe, or even possibly Verstappen, I can't think which one of it was, please don't kill me. Hamilton was racing in the first lap and chose to abort mission. He was like, cool, I can do this later on in the race. He went off. Verstappen did not go off. He decided to continue and went straight into Hamilton, on top of Hamilton, landed on dude's head. Like, it was crazy.
Literally on his head.
Yeah.
So yeah, Verstappen clipped the sausage curb. Obviously isn't thinking about backing out at all, which is Verstappen's biggest problem. He never backs out. And then yeah, just the collision. Like, at first when I saw it, I was like, oh, that looks bad. Didn't actually realize how bad it looked until you saw the slow replays and stuff, and he literally landed honestly, the halo actually saved Lewis's life that day, because
that would have just snapped his whole head and his whole neck.
Literally, if you see where, like, you can see where the wheel actually pushes his head down, and he's literally like, oh, and his helmet and everything. I'm just so grateful for Formula One safety, because I don't even want to think about what could have happened if that halo hadn't been there.
Literally.
Yeah, awful. So yeah, basically that happened. Both drivers are out. And then obviously the stewards had a decision to make regarding, what was going to happen. There was a post-race decision that they made. And then I think that same evening we found out that Verstappen now has a 3-place grid penalty for not backing out and causing a collision, which obviously he'll have to take in Russia. So yeah, I mean, weird weekend for them, but great weekend for the McLaren boys, because it just gave them free reign to just go flat out. And yeah, they were great, and I think they do deserve that 1-2 that they got, and I'm very happy for Daniel and Lando. Yeah,
I'm happy for both of them. I'm slightly happy for Ricardo, but he kind of got the number 1 spot.
I'm so much.
I wouldn't say ahead of Lando, because that's not really what I mean. But I'm happy that they allowed him to take the podium, because there could have been a moment where maybe Lando was a bit faster or something like that, and they could have let them race, which could have been disastrous. Who knows what could have happened? But they allowed him to kind of like go forth and enjoy that moment, considering how difficult the first half of the season was for him. I really, really just love the fact that we got to see him in his element. And, we said, give him a few races, and probably after the break, like, he'll be better, and he is. And I just hope that continues for him over the next, like, the rest of the season. So yeah, I'm super happy for the 1-2. Perez, we should mention as well. So Perez actually finished in 3rd, but he basically did an overtake move on Leclerc. That was he went off track to kind of do the move and then didn't give it back fast enough, which led to him getting a penalty. So that allowed Bottas, who had made his way from 20th up to 4th, to be on the podium. That decision was actually made during the race, so Bottas was physically standing on the podium to take 3rd place, which I thought was also, again, I feel like this was an underdog weekend. Like, the people who perhaps, like, we wanted them to get accolades during the season and they haven't for some reason matured or like managed to get that, then this is their time. So I thought it was just a really cool race in that sense. Okay, so we're going to wrap this one up. We're not going to keep you guys too much longer.
Conscious about how dark I'm getting in my room, by the way, guys. So that's why we're wrapping this up so quickly.
I've told Maz I'm going to brighten this in post, but who knows what she'll look like when I do that. So, driver of the day. Who was your driver of the day?
Ricardo.
Ricardo. Okay. For me, I'm going to say Bottas just to be a little bit different, but also Ricardo. I love. I think both of them
Happy
did
for
really
both
well.
of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And loser of the day?
Obviously, Max.
Yeah. Sorry,
Absolute
Max.
shite that he is.
Yeah.
And also, do you know what? It was so rude that he got out of his car and didn't even go and check and see if Lewis was all right. I thought that was so disrespectful.
I mean, when the shoe was on the other foot, the first thing Lewis was saying was, "Is Max okay?"
Yeah.
And you know, Max didn't give a crap. He was like, "That's what you get for not pulling out." So you can just see the difference in mindsets. Hopefully, Max will mature. We've commended him over the season for being a lot more mature than he has been in past seasons, but clearly still has a long way to go. But you know what? As also at the same time, at least now he knows that the track is not his. Like there's other people on the track, and sometimes you have to be the one to pull out and back out. So hopefully he's learned his lesson as well.
All right. Anyway, guys, we will catch you in a few weeks' time when we are at the Russian Grand Prix. Let's just see how that race goes down. I mean, hoping that Mercedes can, I think they've regained the lead or something. No, they've retained their lead in the constructors. I think, we just basically need Hamilton to be on form and get as many points as he can because we need him to win this year. So, yeah. Obviously, as usual, check us out on all of our socials at On the Chicane on Instagram and Twitter. Like, share, subscribe, whatever, comment, let us know your thoughts, and we will catch you next time after the Russian Grand Prix.
Deuces.